Welcome back to another explainer. Imagine you're just chilling at home on a totally quiet, unremarkable evening. You're completely relaxed, and then out of nowhere, a deafening crash just shatters the peace right above you. I mean, it literally sounds like something unimaginably heavy has just struck your house directly from the heavens. Well, today, we're unraveling a phenomenon that is equal parts confounding mystery and tragic science. We are going to explore exactly how and why human beings are literally falling from the sky.
So let's dive right into this. The date is January 15th, 2011. It's exactly 9:15 p.m. in Al Faisal Colony in Lahore, a neighborhood that sits right next to the airport. A man named Haji Muhammad Afzal and his family hear this terrifyingly loud crash coming from their roof. Neighbors are pouring out into the street, and when Afzal's family rushes upstairs to check it out, they are met with a scene that completely defies logic. Lying right there on their roof is the lifeless body of a young boy. And here's the thing, he hadn't climbed up there. Judging by the impact, he had fallen directly out of the sky. The police arrive, take the body, and everyone is just left standing there staring upward, asking, how does a boy just fall from the sky? The police eventually identify the boy as Qasim Siddiqui. He was a local from the Dargawala area, probably between 15 and 20 years old. Now let's look at his timeline. That morning, Qasim got into a really bitter argument with his family. Angrily, he left the house, supposedly for his studies, but he never came back. He basically ran away with a friend named Ali Jamshed. His family even went as far as filing a missing persons report. But here's where the story shifts from a standard runaway case into a full-blown aviation mystery. That very same night, right around the exact moment Qasim crashed onto that roof, an AirBlue commercial flight was taking off from the nearby Allama Iqbal International Airport, headed straight for Dubai. And as that plane took off, the pilots immediately got on the radio with air traffic control to report a mechanical issue. The plane's landing gear, the wheels, wouldn't close properly. But then, just minutes later, the pilots radioed back saying, actually, the issue mysteriously resolved itself and the wheels had retracted. So, what actually happened? Well, Qasim was hiding inside that very landing gear compartment, trying to stow away to Dubai. The way an airplane's landing gear works, those heavy compartment doors have to open wide to let the wheels retract into the belly of the plane. So when those doors opened up at an altitude of about 250 feet, Qasim was dropped directly onto the roof below.
Section 1. The Fatal Hiding Place.
Now, you might be thinking this was some freak anomaly, but Qasim's story is actually part of a much larger, much darker global history of aviation stowaways choosing the most fatal hiding place imaginable. Get this, before the year 2015, there were at least 113 recorded incidents worldwide of desperate people attempting this exact same method. That's 113 times a human being bypassed airport security, sprinted across a tarmac, and climbed up into the cramped, pitch-black machinery of an airplane's wheel well, hoping to cross the globe completely undetected.
But here's the incredibly grim reality of making that choice. Out of those 113 recorded attempts, 86 resulted in a brutal death. So the takeaway here is that choosing to hide inside a plane's landing gear is basically a guaranteed death sentence. But to truly wrap our heads around why that fatality rate is so catastrophically high, we've got to look past the machinery itself and talk about the atmosphere.
Section 2. The Science of Survival.
Let's transition into the actual science of what happens to the human body when it leaves the Earth like this. We all know what a commercial flight feels like from the cozy inside of a passenger cabin, right? But the environment just inches below the floorboards is totally alien. Up at cruising altitudes of 35,000 feet, the conditions are absolutely brutal. First off, the temperature plummets to a mind-numbing -63 degrees Celsius. Second, there's practically zero oxygen up there to breathe. Third, unlike the cabin where you're sitting, the wheel well has absolutely zero pressurization. And if all that wasn't enough, even before the plane reaches those high altitudes, there's an immediate, massive risk of just being crushed to death by the heavy, folding machinery of the wheels themselves as they pack into that incredibly tight compartment.
So, if a stowaway somehow manages to survive the crushing hazard of those retracting wheels, they immediately face two silent killers, hypoxia and hypothermia. Because there's no pressurization and no breathable air, hypoxia sets in super fast. That's a deadly oxygen deprivation to the brain, which causes confusion, unconsciousness, and eventually death. At the exact same time, that -63-degree air is inducing severe hypothermia, which rapidly drains the body of fatal amounts of heat. In almost every case, the stowaway falls unconscious, freezes, and passes away long before the plane even gets near its destination. Then, when the plane finally arrives and opens its landing doors to deploy the wheels, the body simply falls from the sky.
Section 3.
A desperate precedent.
Knowing this brutal science and knowing how utterly impossible survival seems, you really have to ask yourself, who on earth would do this? Well, let's trace the tragic journey of a boy named Mohammed Ayaz. Ayaz was from a village in Azad Kashmir, and he carried the incredibly heavy burden of trying to support 10 siblings. Seeking a better life in the UK, his family actually scraped together enough money to pay an agent, only to get scammed and lose absolutely everything. Desperate, Ayaz was sent to Dubai for hard labor, and eventually made his way to his brother in Bahrain, still totally fixated on making it to the UK to earn money for his family. In June of 2001, Ayaz vanished in Bahrain. What we found out later is that he managed to sneak into the landing gear of a British Airways Boeing 777 heading to Dubai, and presumably onward to London. At 7 a.m. in a parking lot in southwest London, right beneath the flight path, Ayaz's body was discovered with a crushed skull. He had fallen from those freezing heights the exact moment the plane opened its gear to land.
The heartbreaking part is, Ayaz just wanted a better life for his 10 siblings, and it is absolutely crucial that we remember the humanity behind these statistics. These are not thrill seekers or teenagers pulling some foolish stunt. These are real people, pushed to the absolute edge by crushing poverty, false hopes, and immense financial pressure to save their families. They take these unimaginable risks because honestly, to them, their current reality feels just as unsurvivable.
Section 4. The Boy Who Lived.
But what happens when the unsurvivable is somehow survived? When you look at the tragic norm of certain death from freezing, falling, or being crushed, there is one modern anomaly that completely and utterly baffled aviation and security experts. A 13-year-old Afghan boy actually hid in the landing gear of Comair flight RQ441, which was flying from Kabul to Delhi. Now, this flight lasted nearly 2 hours. Outside temperatures dropped to negative 50 degrees Celsius. Oxygen levels were practically at zero. By all the laws of physics and biology we literally just covered, he absolutely should have died of hypoxia or hypothermia. Yet, miraculously, he survived. At 11:10 a.m. on a September morning, security staff at the Delhi airport were completely stunned to find an undocumented child just wandering around the tarmac. When they detained him and started asking questions, their jaws practically dropped. He explained that he was actually trying to get to Iran, but accidentally climbed into the wheel well of the flight headed to Delhi instead. A quick search of the landing gear compartment proved he was telling the truth, too. They found the only possession he had left behind, a small red audio speaker. But despite his unbelievable survival, because he didn't have any documentation or records, he was eventually deported right back to Afghanistan.
Throughout this explainer, we've dug into the horrifying mechanics, the fatal science, and the deeply heartbreaking human stories behind wheel-well stowaways. From that roof in Lahore to a parking lot in London, all the way to a tarmac in Delhi. So I want to leave you with this final lingering question. What level of desperation drives a person to risk an 80% chance of death, braving negative 60-degree temperatures and basically zero oxygen, just for a mere chance at a better life? It's a really stark reminder of the immense privileges so many of us take for granted every day, and the extreme lengths the human spirit will go to in the search for hope. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll see you next time.